Peggy, very nice to meet you. So I'm Ryan. I'm a committee member for the ESA Queensland Young Economists Committee, and I'm a young public sector economist. I work for Queensland Treasury as an economic analyst, and it's great to have you with us to tell us about your career.
Thank you very much, Ryan. So my name is Peggy Schrobakk. I'm an agriculture and food system economist, and I currently work for CSIRO, which is Australia's national science agency. And so within that role, I'm currently holding a senior research position.
Alrighty. Why don't we start off with a bit of background? So can you tell us about your academic and professional journey?
Yeah.
How did you end up where you are now, and what attracted you to the role?
Yeah, that is a good question. So as you can hear from my accent, very strong German accent, I'm from Germany. And to be honest, when I finished high school, I was a little bit overwhelmed with the opportunities that I had at the time. So my parents pretty much left me to decide what I wanted to do. The only limitation was that they wouldn't be able or couldn't support me financially. So I had to figure out what I wanted. So I took 2 years off, basically, gap years, where I worked. I traveled quite a lot. And during that process, I tried to figure out what I really wanted. I knew that I wanted to go to university, but I wanted to make a decision that, I wouldn't regret. So I think that time was really good. So within that 2 years, I ended up getting a casual job in one of the banks in Germany, in Frankfurt, in the back office. So nothing big, but it gave me good insight about what banking is, the banking sector. I liked it. It was quite exciting at the time. So I decided, okay, why not business? Because there were other subjects that I could completely rule out, something like engineering or the healthcare sector. So that wasn't for me. And I decided, okay, let's go with business. So I started that degree, but then also very soon realized business is maybe not it. I had some electives in economics, which I really liked. And we had guest lecturers also coming in, explaining a little bit about what it means to be an economist. And I remember we had people coming in from the European Central Bank, explaining about, what they do, their day-to-day work and, decisions about monetary policy, etc. So I found this really exciting and thought, okay, why not just switch to economics? So that's what I then did for the rest of my undergraduate. It took me still a while to finish that degree because I had to work. And I still like to travel. So it took quite a long time. And at the end, I thought, okay, that's it. With university life, I'm done. But I also didn't really know what to do next. So I had the opportunity to work for a bank, but I thought there is possibly more, but I didn't know what the more was. So I did more traveling, ended up here in Australia and got a job at the Foundation for Development Corporation, so a small NGO here in Brisbane that offered some work in the Pacific region, economic aspects of development, agriculture aspects as well. And I really liked it. So I worked in that sector for about 2 years, figured out my visa situation as well, because initially I was here on a work and holiday visa. So that took a while as well. But then, I worked as a consultant in agricultural context in developing countries and liked that agricultural aspect because I'm originally from East Germany. My parents had a subsistence farm, so I had this kind of
a bit of a background.
Exactly. So the production side. Liked it. I liked the food context, where's food coming from, what are the issues in producing food, things like that. Yeah, I really liked it. But again, I had the feeling there's more for me. I needed, more. I wanted to learn more. So then I had the opportunity to do a research assistant position at a university here in Australia. And that was really interesting because it provided me the foundations for research. So, the research planning, developing an innovative idea, data collection, data analysis, the write-up, publication, etc. So the entire process, that was really interesting. And also getting the supervision, so really good supervision and, pointing me into new direction. Because as a young researcher, you can get very easily lost as well. So that was quite nice. But again, I thought there could be more. So I decided to do a PhD. And my topic was actually on the oyster industry, more specifically the Sydney rock oyster industry in Australia.
Right. Okay.
So a traditional,
interesting niche.
Yeah, it is. It's a niche. It's a niche. But I also like it because it had that traditional aspect. Because Sydney rock oysters were already, harvested by the indigenous Australian people, and then developed more into an industry, but was struggling quite significantly. So I undertook different type of economic analysis to investigate a little bit more about what the issues are from an economic and social perspective. The really cool thing was that I worked with the industry. So, doing surveys, getting an input from the industry. I went out,
getting in there,
out to an oyster lease. Exactly. So hands-on. I really like that. And to be honest, some people say, oh, PhD is really hard work. I had a really good time. And also because I had really good supervisors, Sean Pascoe and Louisa Coughlin. So that was a really, really great time. During my PhD also, I got a child, and straight after I got my second child. And that probably was the most difficult time for me during my career so far, really handling young kids, handling a career kind of a very early on, looking for opportunities, looking for job stability. So work in research often means there is funding insecurity. So I was on short-term contracts with a family, young family, with, not a lot of sleep. So that was these first postdoc years were, for me, really, really demanding. But again, I had the passion for my work, for economics, agriculture, research. So I was also very lucky because I had a really good network of colleagues, also senior colleagues who helped direct me, helped also with opportunities, even, if they were kind of on a very short-time basis. It helped me to stay in research, stay engaged. So that was really good that I had this network at the time. And so I worked, then I found a position at the Queensland government as an agriculture economist, worked there for a year, then moved on to Central Queensland University for a couple more years in research as well. And then in 2020, I started at CSIRO in my current position where I do agriculture and food system research. So great. That pathway just shows you that for me, it took quite a long time to really find what I wanted to do. And then, once I found that, it wasn't straightforward either because I wanted to stay in research and it took quite a bit of determination to stay there. And certainly I can say for myself, it's still kind of a pathway to figure out, so what's next, what are the next objectives. And so, I think it's just a matter of accepting that a career cannot always be straightforward. Sometimes you have to be flexible and kind of revisit, reflect, and then, take potentially slightly different pathways. Yeah.
Thanks very much for sharing your story and sharing those insights.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about what you're doing currently? So where do you sit in CSIRO and what research have you been working on recently?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, agricultural research, food system research. So I work for the department in CSIRO. I work for the Agriculture and Food research unit. So our focus is basically helping Australian industries, food producing industries, and also communities to address the challenges that they're facing. So multiple climate change, food market dynamics, export barriers, etc. So that's basically what I'm involved in. Some of the recent studies that I did was on consumers, so consumer preferences for sustainability-focused food attributes, so something like low CO2 emissions in the production process, animal welfare, etc., and compare that where the preferences are compared to the conventional attributes, something like price, appearance of seafood, taste of seafood. And this study was undertaken in Australia, so focus on Australia and its 11 key seafood export countries.
Right.
So that was really nice because I worked with other researchers from the same background in these 11 countries. So that was really great because they brought their perspective on as well. So we did data collection in form of a survey, then analyzed it, and the findings were basically meant to inform our seafood industry here in Australia about what the market for sustainable attribute or sustainable seafood is in these export markets, but also here in Australia. So really it was to inform these decision makers, these kind of industry organizations, producers about, consumer seafood interests.
And what insights did you get out of that project?
Yeah, so just very briefly, so we found that food safety and taste are the key attributes that came out in the top two preferences for all the 12 markets. And then it became a little bit more country-based. So some countries really prefer these kind of traditional attributes, like they look for price, appearance, the origin as well. So they really focused on that. Japan, for instance, is one of the key countries in that group. Then we have other countries that are kind of starting to look more into the sustainability-focused attributes, Australia as well, which was good to see. So the US and New Zealand as well. So and why we did that was really to help the industries to kind of strategize a little bit more, align their marketing strategies depending on the culture, the different markets, basically. Yeah, so that was actually quite insightful. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Can we get a little bit more specific and sort of get into the detail? What kinds of economic tools and techniques do you use in your research? So you mentioned a survey for this research project, but what other types of data do you look at? What economic concepts do you use, and how does that feed into the analysis that you do?
Yeah. So that's a good question. And the short answer is it really depends on the project. So I get many projects, different types of projects. So I mentioned the consumer side here, survey analysis, and survey data collection, and then analysis. And that specific one, we did a latent class analysis, so trying to identify different types of consumers and their characteristics, basically. So a choice experiment was that. For other analysis, where the question was about the global livestock, the value of the global livestock sector, the market value. So we used data from the FAO there and analyzed based on quantity and value data, what the kind of the trends in the market value was globally for different types of livestock. And that helped to inform decisions about investments into the livestock sector as well, like disease prevention, for instance. It's also very relevant for the question about livestock and climate change. So having this foundation, the market value globally, and then obviously into different regions as well. And our work includes, for instance, supply chain analysis, a lot of supply chain analysis, because during COVID, we experienced what it means if we don't have food available, if there are disruptions in the supply chain. And disruptions can occur due to different reasons, animal diseases, for instance. We recently saw that with eggs, avian flu. So that is obviously an issue. Here in Queensland, we often have cyclones, floods. So these are usually big disruptions to supply chains. And the question is, how can we make our supply chains more resilient? So how can we as a stakeholder group work together to be prepared for the next events? And what are our economic and social considerations in that? So that's one kind of stream as well, but I also do efficiency and productivity analysis for different sectors as well, fisheries sector, for instance, and then just market analysis, looking at price dynamics, co-integration between prices of different products. And what that means for instance, for import versus domestically produced products. So it's really diverse. It depends on the project, on your question.
Very broad.
Yeah.
Okay. Sort of getting to, I guess, questions and what the impetus for your research is. You are working with CSIRO. And, I think most people, and myself included, tend to think about CSIRO in terms of, hard sciences, and, lab coats and, that sort of stuff. So where does economics fit into this? And, do you think it's important that economists sort of have a seat at that scientific table?
Yeah, that is a really, good question. So CSIRO, as I mentioned before, is Australia's national science agency. And science, you mentioned that before, people have a certain kind of view on science, that it's, just one thing. It's something like, plant science, plant breeding, animal breeding science, or kind of robotics.
I have a friend who does that, actually. She works with CSIRO and she does plant diseases.
Yes, yeah. So, but we do much more work. Like basically, what CSIRO is trying to challenge are the big questions that we have, that our society, our country faces. So, it can be very diverse. Can be climate change. It can be it can be technological challenges. So really, we're trying to address these issues that the Australian industries are facing, but also kind of that communities are facing as well. So we have, a very broad range of scientific research being undertaken. And that includes environmental work on oceans, biosecurity, biodiversity, technology, energy, space, robotics, and food production. So, and in fact, we actually have many economists and social scientists working at CSIRO because Economics 101, economics is about choices, how we make choices in a society, and particularly under limited resources. So, and if we do want to make decisions about, for instance, how to progress on climate change, how do we adapt to climate change, the food producing sector, for instance, then we may have different options to do so, but we need to assess the options from an economic perspective.
Be able to understand those trade-offs.
Exactly.
Different choices.
Exactly. What that means also for different groups of the society. You know, if prices become more expensive, food prices become
those distributional
more
impacts. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why economics plays an important role. And many of the projects that I work on, I may not be the project leader, but I'm part of a multidisciplinary project team to bring in that specific economic and social science perspective into a project, into recommendations about the progress of the decisions. And economics is about decision making as well. So that's why I think we're using more economists and social science in what we do.
So really getting like a holistic and I can't think of the right word. Like
perspective.
Different sort of perspectives from different areas.
Yeah, so that's great. But sometimes I have to admit it's also difficult because you have to stand your ground as an economist. So, things matters can be looked at from different perspectives. And for me, often it's very interesting to see people with a different background have different opinions on the same thing. So for me, there's a lot of learning in there as well. But often I have to really stand ground and say, here, from an economic perspective, this would be more advisable compared to, what you would suggest. So how can we find a compromise?
Okay.
So I often find that as well, which, is challenging, but still interesting.
If I can sort of pick up on that point a little bit, how do you think, you mentioned standing your ground and being able to provide that economic perspective. How do you think economics can fit into those sorts of broader policy questions, both within sort of agriculture itself and looking at policy more broadly? I guess.
Yeah, that's a good question. So economics is about decision making. And I see my job as a role in which I create information based on my research, based on research questions and the work that I undertake in order to answer these questions. And my work is kind of focused on informing decision makers. That can be policymakers, but it can also be, people working in the industry peak bodies, producers, agriculture producers, government authorities, for instance, really contributing with information on which decision makers can use to come up with recommendations all the way forward. So really, it's a big part of my work is also providing recommendations, different pathways, and discussing what the implications are. Yeah, so that's how I see my role as an economist.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. If I can spring a bit of a technical question on you, you mentioned earlier your work in looking at sort of efficiency and work in fisheries efficiency. I was having a read through one of your papers and one of the papers you contributed to, and one of the things that I thought was interesting in there was you talked about sort of different efficiency metrics between short run and long run production for fisheries. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about sort of what those different efficiency metrics are and how that can be a part of decision-making processes.
Right, you got me now. So I have to think back which study that may have been. So basically, what we do, we often look at short-term effects and longer-term effects. And what does that mean for policy implications? So in the short run, what can be done in order to address it? So that may be kind of simple things, but in the longer term, some regulation may be changed, and it may take more time for the fisheries sector to adapt to that, because, sometimes it's a matter of labor, for instance. You don't have enough labor, or, different inputs, for instance, which are not available, which could be kind of addressed by different types of policy. So that will take time to adapt. So I still can't remember which exact study you're referring to.
No, I should have been more prepared and had the title ready to go.
But it's just, reasons why we look at short-term and long-run in kind of often in our analysis and then in our recommendations as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to cover off on sort of the technical side of the work that you do?
Not really. I think as an economist, you should be open to exploring different type of methodologies as well. Mm-hmm. So sometimes even for one study that I'm kind of considering at the moment, I'm talking to psychologists, for instance, to see what type of methodologies they use. So it's really kind of my recommendation is stay as broad as possible and use the ones that are really relevant. And they often may be used and maybe mainstream in other kind of disciplines. So that's basically my learning, and lifelong learning. So there is frequently I find myself challenged by a topic that I haven't explored before. I need new methodologies and I need to acquire them. So that's really kind of, you need to stay flexible and adaptable, I reckon.
That's probably really good advice for me as well. And I think that goes quite neatly into the last question that I wanted to ask of you, which is, your work sits a little bit outside sort of the mainstream conception of economics. And I guess the question is, what advice would you have for students or young economists like myself who are going into careers in economics? What advice would you give them?
Yeah. So my advice is embrace the breadth of economics. So economics, it's not just about market and finance. It has so much more to offer. And it often also interlinks with other disciplines. As I mentioned, psychology before, if you investigate behavior, specific market behavior, things like that, you can bring in expertise from psychology, from social science as well. So I work a lot with other social science as well. So it's really kind of don't confine yourself just to market and finance. There is so much more to explore. So be open to that. I also think stay curious because there's so much development currently happening, so much different topics to explore. So if you're interested in, decision-making choices, how people make decisions, on what basis, etc., then throw yourself in and explore. It is highly likely, if you don't find something in the literature, for instance, that it hasn't been explored. So I think it's wonderful. If you like to learn, then I think it's a fantastic job. But at the same time, I also need to stress that you need to have a good foundation. So the undergraduate degree provides that foundation. And I often find myself actually going back to the Economics 101 book. I have one from actually when I was lecturing that I often just open and just read it again and all right. I'm
going back to those sort of
going back to the
concepts.
basics, and that happens so often that I get comments from the reviewer and say, but remember the foundations of economics, how markets work. So and that's always a good reflection. So is essential. I mentioned the diversity of methodologies. So keeping an open mind there as well, because, different problems from an economic analysis can be approached differently. And there are new methods emerging as well. So really stay open to that. What I learned through my career, and I briefly mentioned that before, is a good network. I think it's very important to have a good network. It's probably in every job like that. A good network and mentors, really, that you can, go and ask, have a discussion, get some advice on your career paths. I found that really useful. I think throw yourself in there and learn from other people's expertise as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's my key advice. I have one more advice, which I'm really passionate about. Mm-hmm. So particularly for young women, I think we need you in our kind of group of economists, which is male-dominated still. But I think there is a role for more kind of diversity, for more equality as well, because females bring in a different perspective in policy making, but also in economic analysis. Different types, different topics are usually explored by females. And we need that. We need that innovation as well. So I really, if you're a young female considering economics, then please reach out. We have a wonderful network, Women in Economics, here in Australia. So within that network, there are many females that are willing to provide advice and mentorship. So please reach out.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to sit with us and share your insights and tell us about your career and the really interesting work you've been doing.
Right. Thank you for inviting me, Ryan. Yes, it's my pleasure.
Cheers.